deep and so heavy that roofs are collapsing, drifts are pushing in walls, shifting snow has already broken lines to propane tanks. 53 homes in the Alpine Meadows area already damaged or destroyed, and some were blown up when broken propane tanks leaked and caused explosions up there. The snow situation, in fact, is so bad right now in the Tahoe area that many communities are asking for federal disaster aid for the very first time in history.
Next on Channel 7 News tonight, another turnaround in the planned layoffs in the financially strapped Oakland schools. And also, legal chaos comes to an end in the trial over the estate of Groucho Marx.
We just stole this new Nissan Sentra.
New Nissan Sentra. You need this car.
We stole it.
For only $49.49.
Ultra mileage.
Front-wheel drive.
Plenty of power.
5-passenger room.
Still only $49.49. I need this car.
You need a Nissan Sentra. Steal.
Datsun, we are driven.
Here's Monday Night Football. They shoot it using Canon broadcast optics. Here's my son's football game, but it looks broadcast quality. I use new Canon Accu-Vsion portable video. Accu-Vsion has Canon's power zoom lens, automatic focus, and broadcast technology for pictures that look broadcast.
Tommy Vigorito!
Hey, how'd your game make prime time?
New Canon Accu-Vsion, the clear advance in portable video.
There was a sudden about-face at the Oakland School Board tonight that dealt a blow to the jobs of 225 teachers there. It was triggered by the new discovery of a more than $2 million deficit in addition to the projected deficit for next year. Channel 7's Mark Gibson was there when the apparent victory turned into a defeat.
Teachers were sensing victory in their battle to stop layoffs and program cuts proposed by the school district. But shortly after tonight's meeting began, board member J. Alfred Smith, who last week set the stage for a showdown, dashed the hopes of teachers.
Hence, I move to withdraw my motion of last week to uphold the original resolution on layoffs.
This means these layoff warnings mailed to 255 teachers and 7 administrators earlier this month could become layoff notices by May 15th. The plan to cut foreign language programs, school nurses, and counselors still stands.
We are going to make a difference on Election Day. We want competent, we want dedicated and committed school board members who stand up for the school sites in the classroom. We don't want wishy-washy people who get on and off a fence.
Board members say they will not reconsider tonight's decision until they learn more about this newly revealed deficit facing them this school year, a shortfall that could mean cuts and layoffs before school bells ring next year. At the Oakland School Board, Mark Gibson, Channel 7 News tonight.
The teachers and the board agreed the only solution is a long-term financial plan. The City Council has appointed a special committee to discuss a special tax override to beef up the board's anemic budget. Jerry?
Well, the verdict is in this evening in the Groucho Marx estate trial, the one in Southern California, the trial of Aaron Fleming. The jury has decided that Fleming defrauded Groucho Marx during their 6-year relationship, and they awarded nearly $500,000 to Bank of America. The bank is the executor of Groucho's estate. The foreman said the jurors wanted to punish Fleming. Her attorney asked the judge to throw out that verdict and declare a mistrial. The judge said no way. Fleming was not in court. Her attorney said that she's so upset by that verdict that she is, in his words, going berserk.
Jim Selania next with sports. He has the story of the red wave flooding Madison Square Garden and also a special look at a swimmer who believes it's never too late.
I'll bet you don't realize you're throwing your money away, but a lot of you are. You're paying too much for long-distance calls. Look, it's so easy to get Sprint. You use the same push-button phone, nobody comes to your house, but all of a sudden you could spend only half as much on long distance. Still, a lot of you go right on paying up to twice as much as you have to. Now, why would you pay twice as much as you have to? For anything. Call Sprint. Find out about it.
I'm here interviewing consumers to find out why PIP is America's #1 while-you-wait printer. Some may say it's PIP's printing variety. PIP prints most anything, most often while you wait. Others could say it's because of PIP's printing quality. Every copy identical to the original. Jane, what are you trying to be in that getup?
Just an identical copy of an original, darling.
Check the yellow pages under printers for the PIP most convenient for you.
Wow. Get a great spring look for under $20. The Gap's annual spring sale. Save 15 to 30% on over half the store. Foxtail pants, colorful tops, and minis. Save on Eaton Hill and Monterey Bay activewear for anywhere. Save 15 to 30% on over half the store. Catch a great look for just $10 to $20. Count on it.
Fall into the Gap.
But I thought you wanted to go.
And I thought you wanted to go.
Let's have some coffee and talk about it.
Times like these are made for Taster's Choice.
When it's time for decaffeinated, Taster's Choice Decaffeinated. A premium blend of coffee using only natural decaffeinators from the bean itself. The purest coffee flavor for your best coffee times.
A lot of excitement in Southern California this evening. The San Diego Zoo is on an all-night watch right now for a history-making birth. Zoo workers in San Diego keeping a sharp eye on that blue condor egg, the one that's begun to show signs of life. The condor chick already has poked that hole in the eggshell, and zoo officials now expect it to hatch completely sometime between 6 in the morning and noon. This would be the first California condor ever hatched in captivity. The California condor, of course, is an endangered species, and wildlife experts hope that this new chick is going to be the start of a breeding program at the San Diego Zoo. That egg that you saw was taken from a condor nest in Central California, and they have a second one, too, and that second egg is expected to hatch in about 10 days from now.
Oh, wow. Let's go to Jim Selania with sports now, because I guess the way that you spell happiness is to say F-R-E-S-N-O.
Yeah, if you live in the East Bay, prop your ear to the south. You can probably hear the celebrating, because there's joy in Fresno, California tonight. The danger fields of college basketball finally got themselves some respect in New York. They won the NIT over DePaul, and the Bulldogs did it again with defense. It's a shame they weren't in the NCAA tournament. Ray Meyer couldn't help his Blue Demons from the bench. Inside again they go. And Coach Boyd Grant, well, he says, I'll drink to that. His team was ahead. They then went behind, came back again strong with good defense, just the way they've done it all the way through the tournament. They go on and defeat DePaul 69-60. Oh, what a welcome home they're going to have tomorrow in Fresno. Why weren't they in the NCAA tournament? Because if you'll recall, in the finals of the PCAA championships, Eric Booker, the former USF player, hit a 30-foot desperation shot that put that team in white out of the NCAA tournament, but they made it count. They went to the NIT and got some respect. Now time for Larry Bird. He was just on fire tonight in Boston. What did he do? He set an all-time Celtic record for a regular season game. All he scored was 53 points, hit 21 out of 30 from the floor, had 24 in the fourth quarter. That breaks Tommy Heinsohn's record. He broke Sam Jones' all-time scoring record. Look at the moves by Bird. He just went through the lane, went to the outside, did it everywhere. His team, in the meantime, crushed the Indiana Pacers. Take a look at the scoreboard. Boston over Indiana, 142-116. The 76ers win. They clinch their division. Washington wins again. They're now just a game behind Atlanta in the playoff race. New York loses to San Diego. Seattle over Detroit, and Dallas was beaten tonight by Utah. They're just about out of the playoff race. But Larry Bird was the story in the NBA with 53 points tonight in Boston. The Giants and the A's both lose this evening and this afternoon. I don't know. Milwaukee, I got everything going on tonight, don't I? Milwaukee beat the A's 8-3. It was California defeating the Giants 3-2 for the A's. Steve McCatty got shelled. It looks like he is not going to be in the rotation. Look for Underwood and the rookie Cotteroli to join Mike Norris and Rick Langford as the A's starters when they take on Cleveland next Monday. And Bjorn Borg is ending his professional tennis career the same way he started it in Monte Carlo, winning. Today, Jose Luis Clerc admitted nervousness playing Borg in his very last tournament, and Clerc lost 6-3, 6-1. Borg now moves on to the second round in his adopted hometown of Monte Carlo, where you'll never hear an H&R Block commercial. I can tell you that right now. Borg wins, he advances, his party is extended, his farewell party. In this weekend's Sports Illustrated edition, San Francisco athlete is featured in the Faces in the Crowd section. And today we had a chance to meet Ludwig Megner. He took his daily swim at the Downtown Olympic Club in San Francisco. At age 92, he now holds national swimming records, and every day he goes for 50 or 60 more laps. For Ludwig, it's not exactly a pleasure swim. It's something that must be done every day.
It's very important to keep on exercising regularly, not just once in a while. And if you're born healthy and lead a moderate life, you can reach a ripe old age, providing nobody hits you over the head in between.
Well, don't get the wrong idea. Ludwig's life consists of more than just jumping in the water and taking off. There is life after swimming.
I don't particularly care swimming. It's monotonous.
Swimming?
Yeah, swimming is, you're up and down is the same thing. What I do like is hiking. That scenery and outdoors changes continuously. That's interesting.
Ludwig Megner, he was born in 1891 in Germany. He swam for his first time in the Rhine River. He's now swimming at the Olympic Club, and we hope he just keeps right on swimming. In swimming circles, he is a folk hero.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
In all circles he should be. I mean, just to have the stamina at that age.
Really?
Great story. San Francisco firefighters have a story of their own, that being that they're worried about a new piece of safety equipment, a piece of equipment that may actually be more dangerous than what they're using right now. The controversy involves replacing those traditional leather fire hats with new plastic ones. The old hats are preferred by the firefighters because they're more durable, but the new plastic ones are supposed to be a lot more safe, and they have already, though, developed some cracks, and the plastic visors distort vision. These new hats are required, though, by the state safety regulations. Fire Chief Emmett Condon says that the fire department's going to go along with using the new hats for the time being, but he says if complaints from the firemen continue, he may ask that the regulations be changed.
Here, here. Something familiar and depressing happening outside, and Pete Giddings is about to tell us what brought in the wet. Stay tuned.
This is the Air Express race, and Airborne's in the thick of it. Airborne's becoming the alternative to Federal because Airborne's made 100% on-time delivery their goal and are making most of their deliveries before 10:30 a.m. Airborne's moving so fast, they've just passed Emory in the number of Air Express shipments picked up and delivered within the U.S. So it's goodbye, Emory. Watch out, Federal. Here comes Airborne. Airborne overnight. We're shooting for 100% on-time delivery.
Discounts, sales, rebates. These days, where do you go to get a reliable, economical car at a really low price? Well, according to a study by automotive researcher J.D. Power & Associates, Isuzu had the lowest median price of any independent Japanese import in terms of prices actually paid. That's because Isuzu dealers have the largest selection of competitively priced cars. So visit a Bay Area Isuzu dealer during pre-spring value days, where the promise to save you money is a reality.
Corky's my best friend. I'd feed him sirloin steak if I could. I can't, of course. I've got a whole family to feed. I can give him M.P.S. chunks, though. Oh, I know I could pay less, but I sure don't have to pay more. Because with M.P.S., I'm getting my money's worth. And with M.P.S., Corky's getting the good quality real meat he loves in a well-balanced diet.
You are worth it, aren't you, boy?
M.P.S. chunks, a real good buy for your best friend.
When it comes to competition, I am the worst. I go wacko. When I compete or if I'm playing a game, I am very, very into winning. And if I don't, I really hold a grudge. I'm an incredibly sore loser.
Calvin Klein jeans.
But I'm an excellent winner. I really am. No, I really am.
A San Francisco man's being hailed as a hero tonight in Phoenix, Arizona. This man risked his life to put out a dangerous liquid hydrogen fire. His name's Robert Predmore of the Liquid Air Corporation. Now, he flew to Phoenix this morning after one of his company's tanker trucks caught fire. A 2-square-block area of the northwest Phoenix was evacuated because the firefighters feared an explosion. Predmore then put on a protective suit, sealed the flaming leak on the truck, and then drove it away to a safe location. That truck was parked near a hydrogen storage tank, and if that tank had caught fire, they say that a huge explosion and a fireball would have engulfed the surrounding businesses, the residential district, for a quarter of a mile in all directions.
That is our vote for a hero.
Wow.
A real hero. What?
Scary, huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
Just when spring apparently had sprung, spring sprung a leak. And here's Pete Giddings to explain all this.
Spring showers.
Oh, not a leak.
Or something you would understand even better, a sagging front.
Ah, I know about that.
Yes, indeed, and I'll show you a picture of a sagging front. 53 is the current temperature, so wipe out the 54 for the morning low. It doesn't stand a chance. 63 was our high. 100% humidity as it's raining outdoors right now. 3018 and rising. That's normal for this time of night. The pressure Winds west at 12 and 17 hundredths of an inch of rain has fallen. Let's put in the map. You'll get to see the front. Now, it is now in our state instead of in Oregon where it was. As we put in the airflow arrows, you'll notice that it's not very strong. There aren't that many arrows around, but where the arrows were going up, they are now going what we call zonal, from west to east. And as the front goes south, it will be continuing to move east and dying on the western end. So don't worry about the rain. Tomorrow is still going to be gorgeous. The earlier forecast will still work out. The only problem is 3 drops turn into 35 million drops. High wind warnings are posted on the upper Snake River area in Idaho and also for the southeastern quarter of Wyoming because of high winds today that range from Nevada having 70-mile-an-hour winds to 80-plus-mile-an-hour winds being reported around parts of Wyoming. Travelers' advisories for very heavy snow from this system are posted for the Cascades and the Siskiyous in Oregon. Small craft advisories for Washington, Oregon, and California to Point Arena, and in San Francisco Bay north of the Richmond Bridge. Tornadoes were reported with thunderstorm activity in the eastern side of Texas, along with some hail. But hail, along with a thunderstorm being reported up around Seattle. There were very heavy rains reported from the system as it started to sag down. Yesterday to today, the 24-hour total up to 6 inches in California, actually 5.80 in a place called Gasquet, up in the northern part of the state, around Leggett. And then in the south and the rest of the west, an inch in Oregon and Washington, an inch and a half in Texas around Dallas, an inch in Arkansas, Louisiana. Record cold this morning in Atlantic City at 24, and Baltimore went to 25. The cool spot in the country was Bradford, Pennsylvania at 10 degrees, and 80 degrees away from that at 90, Yuma, Arizona. From out in space, here is our system. Let's draw the front in for you, and you can see how it's now sagged right into our own area. Has the jet streams changed? Not really. It's still sitting to the north. The system is just sliding south. It's dying very rapidly. Nothing to worry about. Temperatures today, because of rain and cloud, were held down to 54 at Crescent City. On the map, it says 88 at Palm Springs, but it was 89 at Thermal. And the cool spot, Big Bear Lake, going down to 30 degrees. Much cooler than it was up in the Tahoe area. As far as the Bay Area highlights are concerned, they both go to Los Gatos, 44 to 75. The most rain in the 24-hour period ending at 4 o'clock this afternoon was Kentfield. They picked up 25 hundredths. And as far as the forecasted highs are for tomorrow, I'm not changing them. We're going to have lots of sunshine. It's going to be a beautiful day. But for tonight, you got to put up with partly cloudy to cloudy skies with scattered light showers, mainly in the North Bay. But for Thursday, after the morning clouds are wiped away by the sun, it'll be a sunny and warmer Thursday. Our problems will start again on Friday, when we will definitely get increasing clouds from the next system moving in. But as far as rain is concerned, I still don't want to say, so we'll wait and see.
We have to wait and see?
Yes.
Okay, Peter.
It's 2 days away.
Thank you, sir.
I can change my mind tomorrow.
Thank you, I think. The countdown is underway right now at Cape Canaveral, Florida, for that much-delayed liftoff of America's second space shuttle called the Challenger. The Challenger is all set now to blast off with 4 astronauts and the world's largest communications satellite on board at 10:30 Monday morning, our time. Now, you'll be able to listen to the conversations between the astronauts and ground control, not by watching television or listening to the radio. You have to phone. Dial this phone number. It's 900-410-6272. Now, that's not free. You'll be charged 50 cents for the first minute and 35 cents for each additional minute. So, while it's not free, it's not horribly expensive.
Pretty good bargain.
Not bad.
We'll be back next on Channel 7 News tonight. A Marin County New Age movement gets a setback from the old-fashioned junk food.
This is the world of Estee Lauder, filled with enjoyable times. And now she has a free gift for you, a whole beauty collection, including Estee Super Cologne Spray, the fragrance the Estee Lauder woman is wearing. This $19 value is your free gift with any Estee Lauder purchase of $7.50 or more. How great to have Estee Lauder treat you to Estee Lauder. Your Estee Lauder gift is available through April 9th exclusively at iMagnet.
Ever get the feeling you'd like your car to perform as well as it can? That's why stunt driver Tom Anthony uses Mobil detergent gasoline. After all, a clean carburetor performs better. It's as simple as that. Mobil detergent gasoline. For your everyday driving needs.
The time, opening week of baseball, 1983. The event, Ballpark Frank's season opener sale. The deal, a limited time sale price on Ballpark Franks. The place, wherever you see these specially marked packages of Ballpark Franks. The best part? Right now. You can get the Franks that plump when you cook them for the price of something less. The catch? When baseball's opening week is over, ballpark season opener sale will be too.
When did your agent ever tell you you have too much insurance?
Yeah, George, you may have too much insurance.
Too much?
Yeah.
A nationwide agent is trained to handle all your insurance needs, to make sure you don't have too much of one kind and not enough of another.
Your new job gives you additional coverage.
Home, health, car, life, and business.
Oh, good point.
It's all part of Nationwide's blanket protection.
Nationwide is on your side. Nationwide.
One of the stories we're going to look at tomorrow on Channel 7 News is Alpine Meadows. We're going to go there on the anniversary of the killer avalanche that swept through that ski resort last year. Also, the woman you're looking at is Anna Conrad. We're going to have an update on her life. She is, of course, the woman who was buried in that avalanche and survived. Jerry?
We found a health cult in Marin County, a cult that believes that all foods and liquids are poison. So you can imagine the uproar when that cult heard that their co-founder was seen leaving a Marin 7-Eleven store with a bag of groceries and allegedly nabbed at home with a chicken pot pie. Well, the man denied anything about the chicken pot pie charge, but he does admit going to the 7-Eleven, but he said he left just with some magazines. The man claims that he has eaten absolutely nothing since 1964. That's nearly 20 years ago. Yeah. Apparently the charges carry more weight than his denials because the scandal is being referred to in Marin as the junk food gate, and he's being called a sugar or a food addict. The group's plans to open an office in Los Angeles have been canceled. That's how seriously they take it.
Hasn't eaten in 20 years, Tom.
That's what he says.
Just breathes good Northern California air.
I hope there's not enough wind to blow him
now
away.
You know why they canceled the plans in L.A.
I think so.
Good night, everyone. Stay tuned next for ABC's Nightline program.
And join us here tomorrow for Channel 7 News at 5, 6, and 11. Good night.
Good night.
Andersen? I've been going over the expenses in your department. Long-distance calling is higher than ever.
Good. Glad to hear it.
I hope you have a good explanation.
Well, surely you've noticed that since using more long distance, our travel expenses have decreased. Our market coverage has increased. Our profits are up.
I get the message, Andersen. Keep up the good work.
We will, Detweiler. We will.
Your telephone is a business tool. Use it for all it's worth.
You're having a real good day, kid. Must be that new stance. Robinson told you not to talk to me, huh? You're digging in, kid.
That's how Frank told me how to take away the outside pitch.
That's how Frank got hit 198 times.
Come on, Giants. Hang in there.
The Channel 7 News team at 5, 6, and 11.
Los Angeles jury decided this afternoon that she defrauded Groucho Marx and ordered her to pay $500,000 to the late comedian's estate. We'll talk live with Aaron Fleming. There's been a rash of reports that a new Cold War may be brewing between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. We'll discuss that question with William F. Buckley, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and a commentator for Radio Moscow. Is a psychiatrist responsible if his patient tries to kill? 3 men wounded by John Hinckley 2 years ago today think so. They're suing for $14 million. We'll talk with one of their attorneys. And we'll have an update on the story of that 19-year-old Chinese tennis player, Hu Na. The counsel to the Chinese Consulate General in San Francisco wants a chance to talk back. He'll get it.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Good evening. One of her attorneys, Melvin Belli, the man they call the Prince of Torts, called it the damnedest thing I've seen in 50 years of law. He was talking about this afternoon's verdict by a Los Angeles jury against this woman, Erin Fleming. She was a companion to the late comedian Groucho Marx during the last few years of his life, and the jury today ruled in a 9-3 decision that she defrauded him and ordered her to pay almost $500,000 in damages to the Bank of America, which is the executor of the estate. Ms. Fleming, I guess the first question is, what do you do next?
Well, I'm afraid you'll have to ask my attorney. He's
All right.
with me. These are complicated legal questions, Ted, and I really don't understand them.
All right, well, it's handy to have the attorney right there. His name is David Sabe. Mr. Sabe, what do you do next?
What we do next, we're going to ask the judge to set aside the verdict because the verdict is completely inconsistent with the findings. The basic findings were that she did not commit any fraud or any undue influence. So to assess damages against her is against the law.
All right. Just to give us a little bit more background on this case and today's verdict, here is ABC's Tom Shell in Los Angeles.
The jury came in with a verdict against Aaron Fleming and for the Bank of America, and ordering Fleming to repay nearly $500,000 to the Groucho Marx estate.
Compensatory damages, $221,842.09. Punitive damages, $250,000.
In this complex and at times bizarre case, the jurors then had to answer 18 questions relating to how they reached their verdict. The court clerk had read half the answers when the judge suddenly interrupted.
I'm going to ask during this time that the jurors go back into the jury deliberating room. All right, we'll be in recess.
The trial was over a suit by the Bank of America that alleged Aaron Fleming used undue influence on Groucho Marx in the last 7 years of his life and persuaded Groucho to give her valuable gifts, and that Aaron Fleming did not have a license to act as Groucho's agent, even though she did so. In her defense, Fleming's attorneys called a number of witnesses, including longtime friends of Groucho, Carol O'Connor, and George Burns. After several recesses late this afternoon and more consultations by the jury, the judge accepted the verdict. Jury foreman Eugene McCarthy told a news conference that the jurors did not believe Aaron Fleming was guilty of any fraud, but her own testimony hurt her case.
We felt that she was evading the truth and that she had things to hide.
Aaron Fleming was at her attorney's office after the verdict, but had nothing to say to reporters as she left. Her attorney said they will be asking for a new trial. Tom Shell for Nightline in Santa Monica, California.
With us again in Los Angeles, Aaron Fleming. What do you have to say now? I mean, you must be somewhat stunned by all of this.
Oh, no. I really loved Groucho with all my heart. And I know he loved me. And anyone who knows anything about Groucho Marx knows that he was his own man. And I only wish he could be alive. There would be no question of anything, I can assure you. That it really has been explained properly. Mr. Sabe can explain it far better than I can, really.
Well, I'll tell you what, insofar as we have to talk to Mr. Sabe, although I'm sure on another occasion I would love to, we will. But for the moment, you tell me what you're prepared to talk about in relation to this case, and I'll be happy to hear it, because as much as anything else right now, I'm interested in knowing, as I think many people are, what your feelings are when you've just been hit with a $500,000 judgment. These people obviously didn't believe you, finally, in what it all amounted to. I mean, we just heard the foreman say they don't think you defrauded Groucho Marx, but...
Not. It's an impossibility.
What is?
To defraud Groucho Marx. It's like saying that, it's like saying that Groucho Marx was crazy when that was his trademark. I could understand if anyone said this about anyone else. Almost anyone else. But about Groucho Marx, never. He was completely his own man. I'm sure you must understand that.
Well, I think maybe what people worry about is that perhaps he was getting too old. Perhaps he was a little senile. Perhaps you took advantage of his age. That clearly is what was going through people's minds.
It's not possible. We were surrounded by all kinds of people all the time. We were never alone. He was out all over town with whoever he chose to go with. It just simply isn't possible.
Is it true that he gave you a lot of gifts? That you, I mean, we're apparently talking about a lot of money. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I'm afraid that the amount of money includes even the food I ate, lipstick, nurse's food, plane trips. Mr. Sabe can explain to you, this really has never been very clear that the amount of money that I'm charged with is tremendously inflated.
Let me ask you a very practical question, and I'm not asking you about the legalities now. Please understand, so don't refer me to Mr. Sabe. You've been ordered to pay up almost $500,000. Have you got it?
Oh, I was going to ask you if you'd lend it to me.
Well, it depends what the interest rate is, but let me just ask you, have you got it? Are you able to pay that kind of money?
Will you take a check?
Will the Bank of America take a check is the question.
I was wondering if I could put it on my Mastercard.
Mr. Sabe, what happens in a case like this? Does your client have the money? Is that even a germane question right now?
Ted, she is totally penniless. We had to lend her money to pay for her gas bill. We have advanced all the costs of the trials. Mr. Bella and I paid off our pockets $25,000 for the jury fees alone. She's penniless. She spent 6 years of her life with Groucho, and 6 years of this agony. The Bank of America spent $500,000 to go after her. That's what happened.
And now what happens next?
We're going to ask the judge to set aside the verdict because the verdict is totally inconsistent with the findings. They found there was no fraud. They found that Groucho loved her, that she loved him, and that everything that Groucho gave her was out of his desire. Everything was documented. Groucho had the best lawyers in Century City, his best CPAs. They even paid gift taxes for every gift that he gave her, and he deducted her of his income tax.
And yet 9 members of that jury today ended up voting against you and against your client.
Yes, Ted, it's very sad, but we had some problems. We had some racial prejudice here. The Bank of America produced a witness who said Aaron Fleming hated blacks. That's totally not relevant to the case. I don't think Aaron Fleming hated blacks, yet there were 4 blacks in the jury, and 3 of them voted against her. So we were saddled with these problems, Ted.
Aaron Fleming, where do you go from here? What do you do next? I'm not talking now about legally, just what do you do next? What are your plans for the next few days?
I intend to do exactly as my lawyers advise me.
What are your wishes?
I wish to clear my name entirely.
You think you will?
I'm absolutely certain.
All right. Aaron Fleming, David Sabe, thank you both.
Thank you.
Later in tonight's broadcast, we'll be looking at the question of a psychiatrist's responsibility for acts of violence committed by his patients, an issue growing out of the suit filed against John Hinckley's psychiatrist. We'll hear from a Chinese consular official in San Francisco who'll respond to our interview Monday night with Chinese tennis star Hu Na, a young woman seeking political asylum in the United States. We'll talk with an extraordinary television commentator who, on the eve of her 90th birthday, has just signed a new 3-year contract. And coming up next, the question of whether the Cold War is breaking out again.
When you're making a change on the home you love, make sure it's a change for the better.
I told them to use the best.
Why are Andersen Windows first in quality? 75 years of innovation, energy efficiency, and pride. That's quality.
Just right.
Just in time.
Take the time to build the best. That's what we've always been. Come home to quality. Come home to Andersen.
If there's somewhere you need to be and your phone won't let you get there,
Oh, no, Howard, there goes supper.
then get the Radio Shack cordless telephone. It's now sale priced at $69.95. And because it's cordless, this convenient Radio Shack telephone lets you move from room to room, so you can get to where you need to be.
Howard, you are going to love your supper.
Get the Radio Shack cordless telephone, now sale priced at 30% off, and make Radio Shack your telephone company.
All eyes turn to Showtime. Showtime pay TV. All eyes turn to Showtime. There's a difference you can see. The latest and the greatest entertainment variety. All eyes turn to Showtime. Showtime pay TV.
I'm Jim Dunbar, and this is Mike Harvey Chrysler Plymouth's fabulous new showroom in Burlingame, where there is a blockbuster of a sale going on. We've joined together with Miller Chevrolet and Mike Harvey Oldsmobile for a super sale. Over 500 new and used cars, and just look at some of these prices. New 83 Colts from just $48.88. Brand new Reliant Ks from only $66.88. And all with 11.9% financing. Hurry now to Mike Harvey Chrysler Plymouth at the top of Burlingame's Auto Row for a blockbuster of a sale.
Why did the FBI secretly stalk John Lennon and then deny it?
They don't really have anything on us. That's the joke.
Watch 2020 Thursday.
During the past few days, it's been flatly denied by President Reagan, but the headlines continue to surface, reflecting the growing sense that a new Cold War may be in the works. In a moment, we're going to discuss that subject with Joe Adamoff, a Radio Moscow commentator who answers questions for a living on an English-language program called Moscow Mailbag. Zbigniew Brzezinski is with us here in Washington. He's the former National Security Advisor to President Carter. And also with us this evening in New York, the editor of the National Review, syndicated columnist William F. Buckley, Jr. Before we begin our discussion, though, let's listen to what President Reagan offered Moscow today and how he described the Soviets a few days ago.
When it comes to intermediate nuclear missiles in Europe, it would be better to have none than to have some. But if there must be some, it is better to have few than to have many. If the Soviets will not now agree to the total elimination of these weapons, I hope that they will at least join us in an interim agreement that would substantially reduce these forces to equal levels on both sides.
That's the oh-so-reasonable side of President Reagan's two-pronged approach to dealing with the Soviets, the pitch for serious arms negotiation. The other side of that approach is the rhetorical stick that goes with the carrot.
I believe that communism is another sad, bizarre chapter in human history whose last pages even now are being written. Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
All right, let's go to our guest. Joe Adamoff in Moscow. Tell me, which of those two versions of the current Reagan rhetoric is striking the most responsive chord in Moscow?
Oh, we've heard that kind of rhetoric before, Ted. You know, I don't think a responsible executive head of state of any nation should resort to such rabid anti-communism. He said it before in many speeches. He announced a crusade against communism in his speech in the British Parliament, if you remember. The administration has been playing with the idea of a limited war, of a protracted nuclear war, winning this type or the other type of nuclear war. We have all along been saying that we consider that to start a nuclear war is tantamount to suicide. To think that you can win a nuclear war is dangerous madness, and playing with the idea of a limited nuclear war is just as dangerous an illusion.
All right,
now,
Mr. Adamoff, forgive me for interrupting, but you're riding off on your own particular horse there for a moment. I asked you which of those two pieces of Reagan rhetoric Moscow is responding to. In a sense, you're answering me because you responded only to the second one. What about what he said today?
Now, as for when the president, Ted, says better none than some, we have proposed to America, we have proposed the none version. We said, let us scrap all nuclear weapons in Europe, including intermediate nuclear weapons in Europe, including the tactical weapons. Let's scrap them all. There was no response. Now, when the president says if we must have some, it is better to have few, we suggested to have few. We suggested to have just as many rockets as NATO has, 162, not one rocket more. And we also suggested that to have exactly the same number of planes, which Mr. Reagan does not want to count for some unknown reason. I think that's fair enough. Not one rocket more than NATO, not one plane more than NATO. That's what we've been suggesting, and I think that's fair enough, because the basic yardstick which we use in all negotiations is equality and equal security for both sides, Ted. We do not want any superiority over the United States or over NATO.
Splendid. Let's have a little equality with our other guests also. Mr. Buckley, would you like to respond to what you've just heard?
Mr. Koppel, you began this
program suggesting a hierarchy of general concern, which began with Groucho Marx. It seems to me a quite logical choice of the American audience to listen to what happened to Groucho Marx's ex-girlfriend in preference to listen to a paid propagandist of the Soviet Union. If I may say so, what I find really much more interesting than the question of how the situation will crystallize in Europe is how is it that American television feels that we can be informed in a general discussion by listening to a paid propagandist of the Soviet Union who, as you characterize, makes a living by answering these questions, which I would modify by saying he stays alive by saying the right things. Otherwise, they'd scoot him off to a psychiatric hospital, to a gulag camp, and there he would mutter his delinquencies, shielded from your television cameras.
Mr. Buckley, you've raised an interesting question. Perhaps you'll permit me to answer it. One of the reasons for doing so is to give people like yourself an opportunity to respond to it. Would you perhaps, however, respond to the substance of what we're talking about?
I think this is the substance, because I think it's much more interesting to ask ourselves, why is it that we are listening to a paid Soviet propagandist to intone on this subject when we are attempting to illuminate a question which it is their vested interest to obscure. Now, I think that's much more interesting than how many actual reductions in atomic armaments we can actually get them to achieve. If the Soviet Unions want peace, you and I both know that we have opened the gateway for it and have done so rather consistently for the last 35 years.
The broader question, Mr. Buckley, which I'd like to address, and perhaps you will agree to do so, is whether indeed we are moving into a new, and the phrase is, of course, redolent of the 1950s, whether we're moving into a new Cold War. You've seen it in the Times, the Post, Newsweek, are we?
It depends what you mean by Cold War. If by Cold War you mean a realistic assessment of what it is that the Soviet Union is up to, the answer is, I certainly hope so. Since 1980, they have increased their warhead missiles in Europe from 800 to 1,300. We have 0 that complement those. Now, if it requires a Cold War to recognize what it is that the Soviet Union is doing, then let's have a Cold War. But for heaven's sake, let's not begin it by satisfying ourselves that we can learn the nature of its architecture by listening to such a man as Mr. Adamov, who, if he didn't say what was piped into him 2 hours ago by the Kremlin, would be led off to some gulag iceberg. I hope that won't happen to him, but it certainly will if he doesn't say the right thing.
All right, Mr. Buckley, you insist on coming back to that subject again and again, so let me respond. I don't disagree with you, so let me respond and suggest that there is some merit to hearing precisely from a man like Mr. Adamov for the very reasons that you have enunciated, and that is that even though he would describe himself as being a journalist, he is, in fact, reflecting precisely the views of the Kremlin. And in that sense, I think that is useful to an American audience.
No, he's not reflecting the views of the Kremlin. He's reflecting the views of what the Kremlin wants us to hear. It may very well be that the Kremlin understands the initiative of Mr. Reagan as very forceful, but that they want to frighten us into establishing thinking patterns of a different kind. And under the circumstances, the Adamovs are set out to flack for this particular position. So we don't know what the Kremlin is thinking. We know what they're up to, which is very different.
In perhaps the same sense that we know what our own administration is up to when it sends people out to flack. I mean, we have enough public relations people working for an administration. There's nothing wrong with that, surely, Mr. Buckley.
But, Mr. Koppel, how can the administration in a free society flack when there are people like you, and if I may say so, people like me, who can say, cut out the bull? We're here to catch you up when you are preposterous. But nobody has ever said anything of the sort to Mr. Andropov. He knows how to treat people who have said that. They don't any longer exist.
Well, let me take one more crack at responding to what you've been saying, and then with your indulgence, let's move on to some other areas here. It seems to me that precisely the difference between our form of government and the form of government that Mr. Adamov represents is that we do have the opportunity to listen to what he has to say, to weigh it, perhaps as you have done, to disparage it, and that similar kind of circumstance cannot occur in his country. If that is not indeed the very difference between our two forms of government, then what is?
Yes, Mr. Koppel, that is the great difference, but the whole purpose of democratic experience is to listen and then to make certain conclusions. Now, we don't have to listen day after day to arguments that Goebbels might have advanced if he was still alive for eliminating all Jews, do we? We listen to them once, we conclude that they are barbarous and inhumane, and we shut our ears to them. The definition of progress is to listen and to make conclusions on the basis of what it is that we have learned. I have concluded, when about the time I was 18 years old, that I have nothing to learn from Soviet apologists.
Now, if we may, can we move on to the subject of the Cold War? Dr.
Sure.
Brzezinski, what do you feel? Do you think that we're moving into such an era, and if, as Mr. Buckley has concluded, that is not such a bad thing, how do you feel?
I don't believe, Ted, we ever left the era of the Cold War. In that Cold War, there are ups and downs. Sometimes the controversies and the conflicts become more intense. Sometimes there is some easement. We had for a while an era known as detente, but the Soviet Union so flagrantly tried to exploit it to its advantage that collapsed. And we are now in a more open, less ambiguous phase of the Cold War. But in that Cold War, while competing with the Soviets, there are some areas in which we need occasionally to cooperate, and arms control is one of those areas. My hope is that the Soviet leadership will consider seriously President Reagan's proposals, and I think we would be ill-advised to take very seriously the views of lower-level Soviet functionaries, propagandists, as to what Soviet policy might be. The President, I think, has stated a very important proposition, that if the Soviet Union wishes to terminate the arms race, it has to agree to equitable and reciprocal arrangements. And if it does not, then we will have an arms race. And I'm quite confident as to the capacity of the United States, the will of the American people, the creativity of American technology, as to what the outcome of such a race would be.
Gentlemen, with your indulgence, let's take a break. We'll come back in just a moment.
The Easter egg. For generations, people have taken special care to create these beautiful works of art in celebration of this glorious season. With that same special care, your FTD florist has created a bouquet that combines the tradition of the Easter egg with the fresh beauty of flowers in colors that sing of spring. So call or visit your FTD florist today and send the FTD Glory of Spring bouquet. It's a lovely way to send your spring greetings and know they'll be sent with special care.
Some more eyewitness views of Permalens, the world's leading extended wear lens.
I've been wearing Permalens for 7 years now. It's the closest to permanent perfect vision.
My doctor told me I'd find Permalenses more comfortable. There's more water in them than any other lens.
No more glasses, no more hassles.
Permalens extended wear lenses can be worn every waking and sleeping moment. Just remove them every 2 weeks to clean them. Ask your eye doctor about Permalens trial fittings.
For the first time, I can get out of bed in the morning and see past my bed covers.
First there were eyeglasses, then came contact lenses. Now there's Permalens.
Last year, automobile sales were at their lowest point in 20 years. Yet Saab had its best year ever. Every Saab shipped to the U.S. was sold, even the 519 alabaster yellow ones. Saab dealers had to turn away customers because there just weren't enough Saabs to go around. So if you're considering a Saab this year, we would urge you not to waste too much time.
Test drive a Saab at your Bay Area Saab dealer.
The whole family's here. How's the star of my holiday dinner? Hope you're as good as you look.
I got my appetite set for turkey.
The turkey is so important. Thank goodness I got the best. Foster Farm. Oh, perfect. That's Foster Farms for you. Plump, tender, look how juicy, and all natural. For a day like this, there's nothing better than a fresh turkey, fresh from the Foster Farm.
I'm David Hartman. Tomorrow on Good Morning America, we'll have reaction to President Reagan's arms control speech. We'll have more on the situation in Nicaragua, and we'll keep an eye on the possible pro basketball strike. Next week, the space shuttle launch of the Challenger on Good Morning America.
Back to Moscow and Joe Adamoff. Mr. Adamoff, if the vote were taken on this broadcast at the moment, I'm afraid it would be 2-1 against your appearing again. But since the one vote is mine, let me come to you now and ask you what you think of what you've heard so far. You have been disparaged and discounted. Anything you'd like to say in your own behalf?
Yes, I certainly would. I'd like to say a lot on behalf of the nation I represent, a nation that on the average in the last war lost 14,000 lives every single day of the war. In the last war, we lost in approximately a month on the average of the war as many lives as the United States did in the whole 4 long and bloody years, in 1 month. So, you see, we feel this maybe a bit stronger than does Mr. Buckley. You see, we don't want Mr. Buckley, although he did again start this business of name-calling and not agreeing with communism. We don't want Mr. Buckley or the American people to accept communism or our ideology. And speaking of the gulags, I assure Mr. Buckley that the days of the gulags are gone and done forever, never to return.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Adamov, if we could avoid that subject, because I'm afraid that you will find more skepticism. You'll find us unanimous on that one.
You see, the thing is that we don't want you to accept our ideology. What I'm trying to say is that the business of détente is live and let live. We've got to forget what ideology you have, and you must not take into consideration or try to change our ideology. And speaking of Goebbels and Goebbels propaganda, Mr. Buckley, it was none other than the president who not so long ago resorted to quoting the never-existing 10 Commandments of Lenin. This was nothing but pure 100% Goebbels propaganda. Lenin never had these 10 Commandments. I think it was Alistair Cooke that discovered that this was a pamphlet published by Goebbels and quoted by the top executive of the United States.
I'm afraid I'm failing totally in my task to keep any of you on the subject, but let me give it one last try. Let me give it one last try anyway, Mr. Adamov.
Go ahead.
And that is, I would dearly love to come back to this subject of the Cold War and to get a response from you.
All right.
Do you think?
Yes,
you think, as Dr. Brzezinski does, that it has never ended?
You see, people, I have the greatest respect for American executives and for the American people. I think it's a talented and peace-loving people. But unfortunately, I don't want to do any name-calling like Mr. Buckley did.
Well, then don't.
Mr. Brzezinski and people like him are rabid anti-communists. They have it in their genes. He said that after the détente collapsed. May I ask Mr. Brzezinski why it collapsed? Who was it the scrap sold to? For 7 long, tedious years, our two sides, our competent representatives, diplomats, military men, fought over every single paragraph, every single line of the SALT II agreement. And overnight, people knew that there was a parity of forces between NATO and the Warsaw Pact.
Mr. Adamov, you've got one more chance to answer the question. Do you think there's a Cold War going on? You think we're about to resume on? You think it never ended? Please try to respond to the question.
Yes, I think we are being sucked into a second edition of the Cold War against our will, because there's nothing more that we would like to see. We would like to see a continuation of détente. We would like to see a lessening of tensions, because it does your country no good and doesn't do our country any good.
All right, thank you.
Because you don't agree with our system.
Mr. Buckley, let me have a closing comment, if I may, from you.
Well, I think it's important to remember that the Russians are very brave and very fine people. To the extent that 14,000 of them lost their lives on the Western Front during that terrible war. It meant there was 14,000 people fewer that Stalin needed to execute. So in that sense, it was sort of a contribution to the general economy. It has nothing whatever to do with the fact that the Soviet Union is making huge personal sacrifices in order to attempt to intimidate the West, to dictate our policy, and if necessary, to do so by force. I regret this very much, and I'm confident that Mr. Reagan will not permit it to happen so long as he is Commander-in-Chief.
Dr. Brzezinski, the closing summary on this subject is yours.
Well, I'm not quite sure, Ted, what the subject is anymore.
I'm not either, but go ahead and summarize it anyway.
Well, it seems to me that this country has to continue its efforts to structure a more stable relationship with the Soviet Union, making it clear to the Soviet Union that it cannot exploit détente to its own ends, limiting it only to arms control, for example, SALT, while pursuing directly by force of arms expansionist objectives elsewhere. Reference was made to SALT and to its collapse. It is true that SALT collapsed after very painful and tedious negotiations in which I was directly involved. The flunky that you have over in Moscow was not. And the reason that SALT collapsed was because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And that's a very relevant point. I believe the President of the United States, who happens to come from a party different than the one with which I've been associated, has made a constructive proposal. I hope the Soviet leaders are wise enough to consider it seriously, because they do not gain, nor does anyone else, from a continued arms race. The Soviet Union has engaged in a one-sided effort to intimidate Western Europe through the deployment of a massive number of medium-range ballistic missiles. We have offered now to terminate that race, to scale it down. I hope the Soviet leaders take this offer in a constructive spirit, and if they do, then perhaps we can somewhat moderate this continuing historical competition, which is called the Cold War.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry you had so much trouble with our selection of subject and guests, but I thank you nevertheless for your contribution on both counts. When we return, an update to our report earlier this week on Chinese women's tennis star Hu Na, who wants to stay in the United States. We'll have a response to her Nightline interview from a Chinese consular official in San Francisco.
This is what it takes to get your house really clean. Hoover Power. Hoover Power. Hoover Power. Hoover Power. The cleaning power Hoover puts into this spirit cleaner. Hoover Power. The extra cleaning power packed into the Hoover Porta-Power. Hoover Power. The unsurpassed cleaning power of the Hoover Concept 1. Hoover Power. The convenient cleaning power of the Hoover Helpmate. Hoover Power. For 75 years, Hoover has been a powerful cleaning force. That's why America trusts Hoover.
Yesterday, steak in San Francisco. Tonight, teriyaki in Tokyo.
Very international.
Right down to my card.
Mastercard International. So worthy, so welcome.
I bought my baubles in Bimini.
So worthy, so welcome. So worthy, so welcome. Mastercard International.
Who's made Ford Escort the #1 selling car in America?
Me and my Ford Escort.
Who's made your Ford dealer America's #1 full-size truck dealer?
My Ford pickup and me.
And your Bay Area Ford dealer is out to stay #1. His car and truck sales are up 24% over last year. And now, he can save you hundreds with 11.9% financing on all 82 and 83 Ford cars and light trucks. Who's making you #1 in America?
You and you. And your Bay Area Ford dealer.
The envelope, please. There's inside news about the Academy Awards, but only for people who buy people. It's in this special report, how E.T. may be foiled and how director Spielberg may have ruined his chances. Then People talks to the families of hopefuls like Meryl Streep, Lou Gossett, and Ben Kingsley. 10 star-filled pages on the Oscars. No wonder so many people trust people. Plus Lady Diana in Australia, Shelley Long's sitcom Cheers, and lots more. So pick up this week's People for yourself, for your family, and take some guesswork out of the Oscars.
This past Monday, Hu Na, a young Chinese woman who is that country's leading women's tennis player, made her first television appearance on this program. She is asking the United States for political asylum. Here's what she said on Monday. What do you think would happen to you if you went back?
I feel that if I went back, I might be sent to a place for labor reform, or I might be subjected to house arrest. At least, at the very least, I would not be able to play tennis, especially abroad. And I would certainly not be able to go abroad to study. I would not have such opportunities.
The Chinese Consulate General in San Francisco objected. They called that interview blatant propaganda and said they wanted a chance to respond. Joining us live is the Chinese consul, Mr. Yang Zhongliang. Mr. Yang, why do you object to that interview? What's wrong with what Hu Na said?
Well, I'm afraid this interview, as we see it, is unbalanced and biased, and the reasons produced are invalid and untenable.
All right, in that case, perhaps you would like to respond and give some balance to the issue.
Well, as for the reason given that she was being pressed to join the Communist Party, certainly this is not true. And as we all know, in China, it's not so easy to join the Communist Party of China. And party membership is never imposed on anybody.
Her point, as I think you know, Mr. Young, is that her prominence as an athlete was such that she felt that a senior Communist Party official wanted her to join the party because it would give more luster to that particular faction of the party.
No, I'm afraid this is never the way of doing things in China with the Chinese Communist Party. If one wants to join the party, one has to apply, and not something to be imposed on anybody.
Let me ask you this question then. Why is it necessary to make such a fuss about a 19-year-old girl if she wants to stay in the United States? Perhaps you feel she's misguided, perhaps you feel she's even headstrong and wrong and making a tragic mistake, but why not let it happen? If she wants to stay, why not let her?
Well, as we see it, this is not simply something concerning a young girl alone. As you know, she is one of the members of the Chinese women's national team, tennis team. And they came here at the invitation of the American Tennis Association. So naturally, as host, the American side has the responsibility of looking after her safety and that of her other comrades. So, and also we feel that as a young and inexperienced girl, she was lured to leave her team by manipulation.
I'm sorry, by whom?
Manipulation by certain people.
You're suggesting that somehow the U.S. government or someone in this country lured her into seeking political asylum?
As I said, by certain people who wanted to turn this whole thing into a political incident, to poison the relations between China and the United States.
Well, surely, and I mean, you're keeping it very vague, you're saying certain people, you're not suggesting that the government had anything to do with it, but if the government did, or if that's what you're implying, then why do you think it's been, for the past 8 months, an issue of such controversy within the government as to what to do about her case?
I don't mean the American government, of course. I mean certain people. People with ill-intentioned motives.
Well, then why are you, and why is your government allowing that to poison the relationship between our two countries? Why not, as I suggested a moment ago, just allow this to be the case of someone whom you may believe to be a misguided 19-year-old, but forget about it?
Well, as I said, she was lured to leave her team and stay behind in the United States. And this was done by manipulation by certain people. So if this happens, certainly we cannot allow it to pass so easily.
All right. Mr. Young, let me, forgive me for interrupting, let me just ask you, what would happen if, in fact, at some time in the near future, the U.S. government decides that Huna should be granted political asylum? What effect will that have on U.S.-Chinese relations?
In that case, I'm afraid that this will certainly affect the sports and cultural exchanges between our two countries.
What does that mean?
Well, people have to wait and see.
Are you suggesting they would be cut off, diminished?
Well, if that happens, I think you'll come to know it.
All right. Mr. Young, do you have any closing comments to make on this issue? You asked to come on the program tonight. I don't want you to leave feeling that you've been denied the opportunity to respond.
Yes, I think both the Chinese and American peoples cherish the friendship between us. Naturally, we wish that the American authorities would cherish this friendship, which is a result of many efforts by outstanding American political leaders and the American people as a whole. So we don't want to let this hamper the development of relations between us. And in conclusion, I would like to say a few words to Huna in case she is watching. Huna, 在国内政府、你的双亲都非常关心你的境遇。
Would you be good enough just to translate for the rest of us who don't speak Chinese?
Yes. As I said, in China, the government and your parents are very concerned about you. And 中国网球队 所说的，假如你回来的话，将继续派你到参加国际比赛，尤其是1983年6月份的。
Mr. Young, I don't mean to be rude, but this is not a person-to-person telephone call that you're making here. Would you be good enough to explain to us what you're saying?
Yes, I am going to translate it for you. I was saying that the Chinese Tennis Association has indicated that if she comes back at all, they will send her to international tennis competitions. The latest one would be in Switzerland in June 1983. So I think we welcome her to drop in at the embassy. And if she decides to return to China, surely we are ready to give her every help.
Mr. Young, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll turn to another question, the question of whether a psychiatrist is liable for acts of violence committed by his patients. And later we'll talk with a lawyer involved in a $14 million malpractice suit brought against John Hinckley's psychiatrist, with a psychiatrist who testified for the defense at Hinckley's trial, and with the legal counsel for the American Psychiatric Association.
Burger King presents broiling versus frying.
I can't figure McDonald's out. Everybody knows flame broiling beats frying nearly 3 to 1. It was on TV. But McDonald's is frying their hamburgers. Unbelievable. Well, I like them flame broiled. So, what are you gonna do? I know. Go to Burger King. Aren't you hungry?